Making my last video about the new Grandia soundtracks and the music box, and listening to the vinyl record put me in the mood to finally play Grandia HD Collection. It was about time. My Switch has been looking like this all year. You know who's the coolest person ever? Nightshade. He won all these decals as well as a Switch case and a t-shirt in a giveaway, and he knew how much I love Grandia, so he graciously offered me to have them, and I lived happily ever after. I'm seriously considering getting another Switch so I could play that and put this in the safety of the display case. I decided to play the Grandia remaster with Japanese voices because I've never been able to do that before this HD collection. It wasn't long into the game though that I remembered how little voice acting the game actually has. Only certain parts of some major cutscenes get a little bit of voice acting, but the vast majority of cutscenes are text only.
見事だ。やはりお主はわしが見込んだ通りの男だったようだな。
そっか。ジャスティン。
The Japanese voices are alright. There's some over-the-top melodramatic performances in there that are always fun, but I personally love bad English voice acting, and I'm obviously very nostalgic about the Grandia dub, so I don't think I'll ever choose Japanese voices again after this playthrough.
Hello, Aunt Lily! If you keep whacking Justin's head, he's gonna get stupid!
Don't worry, Sue. Justin's prank can't get any worse than it already is.
Mom! I'm hurt. How could you say such things about your only darling son?
One aspect of playing Grandia HD Collection on the Switch that I didn't realize I would get obsessed about is the screenshot function. I had a blast. I must have taken thousands of screenshots throughout the game. Whenever a cutscene started, I would ready myself, and when something cool happened, I would start rapidly mashing the screenshot button to make sure I didn't miss the perfect frame. And after every playing session, I would go into the album, pick out all the best screenshots and delete all the rest. Through this excessive screenshotting, I found out that the Switch has a screenshot limit of 1000. I capped it out a couple times. I'm gonna show you my favorite screenshots from throughout the whole game, so if you haven't played Grandia and don't want to get spoiled, look away for the duration of this song. The game looks so gorgeous in high definition widescreen. Look at all of these. So good! I posted a gallery of these screenshots to the Grandia subreddit, and the people there really like them too. And there, everyone can watch again. I think probably the most controversial thing about the Grandia HD remaster is the smoothing filter they applied to the graphics. Apparently these sorts of filters exist in emulators, so people see them as a cheap way to try to make an old pixel-based game look better. A lot of Grandia fans feel they should have made it toggleable. Apparently it only took someone 1 week from the Steam release to find a way to turn off the filtering, and it looks really nice. I personally think the game looks great even with the filter, but I do share the popular sentiment that it should have been optional. I don't dislike the new style, but I do prefer the original. Other than the filter debacle, the HD remaster apparently had a lot of bugs when it first released, but now when I played it over a year later, the worst I noticed were some minor visual glitches, so I think they've fixed most of the issues with updates by now. My only real criticism of the original Grandia, which carries over to the HD remaster, is the difficulty level. It's way too easy. So to try to make this playthrough a bit more interesting, I decided to give myself a few self-imposed rules. 1. I would purposefully try to skip all enemy encounters while still fully exploring and gathering all the ground loot in every area. There are enemies that are nearly impossible to avoid, and every now and then an enemy managed to surprise me or I failed at avoiding them. So I was still getting into fights, but I was always way under leveled. I did manage to get through a couple areas without initiating a single fight, which was fun. I felt like a proper solid snake. 2. I would never buy weapons or armor from shops, so I could only use equipment that I found out in the wild or got as loot from enemies, which meant that most of the time I was using way underpowered gear. And 3. I would never use items in battle. No healing items, no resurrection items, no attack items, nothing. I would have to rely solely on normal attacks and magic to deal damage and keep my party members alive. I also wouldn't use any sort of recovery items outside of battle. Now, to my surprise, even with all these rules I designed to make the game harder, most of the playthrough was still a cakewalk. Regular enemies are just totally spineless blobs for you to toy with. They almost never pose a threat. Only boss battles provided some small level of challenge in the first half of the game. It wasn't until the final quarter that the game suddenly got tough. It was like hitting a brick wall. For a moment I questioned whether I would be able to finish the game without breaking my rules. But thankfully the combat system has some useful underutilized features you would never use when playing normally, because brute forcing everything works just fine. Some of the later fights took me upwards of 10 tries to get through, but eventually I was always able to figure out some specific strategy to win each boss, which was very satisfying. 2 highly effective strategies I used a lot were the Snooze Magic, that has a chance of putting all enemies to sleep. This works even on some bosses, so I would use it and then do an all-out attack on the enemies that didn't fall asleep and let the sleepy ones be. And the other strategy was Evasion. When you defend, you can choose to either endure to take less damage or evade to physically move on the battlefield. There were bosses that had area of effect attacks that totally destroyed my whole party if they all got hit at the same time. The only way I could beat some of them was to put all 4 of my party members at opposite corners of the battlefield, so that the attacks would only ever hit one party member at a time. Now, I gotta be totally honest, I did cheat on one of my rules one time at the very end of the game. I won't spoil anything, but in the room of the final fight, there are a bunch of recovery items on the ground. The developers clearly wanted you to be able to restore all your stats before the fight, because you get pretty beaten down getting to that spot. And I'm guessing they didn't want to put a save station there, because then people might overwrite their only save file and get permanently stuck if they were too weak to beat the final boss. So I did use those recovery items to restore all my stats before facing the final boss, but I did the fight itself fully according to my rules. I used the items because I was just ready to beat the game by that point. I didn't want to go through all the lead up again. I have a strong feeling I wouldn't have been able to beat the final boss if I went into the fight with depleted magic and special points. But yeah, not counting that single exception, I was able to beat the entire game abiding by these 3 rules, and it really spiced up the playthrough for me. I definitely recommend doing something like this if you want to get some proper challenge near the end of the game. Here's a few fun facts from having played through the game this way. At the end I had a total of 409,576 gold pieces for having never bought anything from shops. The average level of my party was only 32, and due to skipping all those battles, my total playtime was only around 37 hours, as opposed to my usual 50 hours. Grandia HD Remaster is pretty bare bones. You get high definition widescreen with a smoothing filter and the option to use Japanese voices. That's about it. And I think that's all it needs to be. Yes, it would have been nice to be able to toggle off the smoothing filter, or have a hard mode for example, but this is still a fantastic way to play Grandia on a modern system. The first Grandia is pretty much my favorite game of all time, but this was only my second time playing the sequel. I actually want to tell you guys the story of when I played Grandia 2 for the first time, because it's fun. This was over 8 years ago in early 2012 when Twitch was still a hot new thing and everyone was trying out streaming. There was this popular software called XSplit, which made it easy from the technical side of things so anyone could do it. I remember I was talking about Grandia to one of my best friends at the time, Duncan, and he told me how much he loved the second game. I said I was planning on playing Grandia 2 for the first time soon, and he said he would really like to see me play it, so that's what made me decide to do my first ever live stream, where I would play the game. I was living with my mom at the time and we had less than a 1 megabyte upload speed, so I was streaming at a blurry like 360p resolution. This was also the first time I showed my face online. None of my online friends knew what I looked like until the first Grandia 2 stream. You can see some of them talking in the chat there. I had an interesting audio setup going. I wore one headset and used another one as a microphone. I had it laying on the handrest of my couch and I would lean into it to talk to the stream. Good times.
No, I tried that track riff, but that blocks the view for my beautiful beard. Can't have that.
Another reason I leaned into the mic was because I didn't want to be too loud. I was too embarrassed to even tell my mom what I was doing, so I would start the streams at like midnight or 1 AM after she had gone to sleep. It took me 14 live streams over the course of 3 weeks to complete the game, and I loved it.
Yeah. I don't know. 10 out of 10. It's a perfect game.
I don't know why anyone would want to watch them, but edited versions of the Grandia 2 streams are still on my channel in the old videos playlist. Let's get back to the HD collection. After the first game, I didn't bother doing Japanese voices with the Grandia 2 remaster. I knew I would prefer the English ones.
Here we go, Ryudo. Ha! Not even close!
Ryudo spent all day, every day, practicing with his best friend Gata.
I did, however, continue my screenshot obsession with the second game. So, you know the deal, I'm gonna show you my favorite screenshots. If you don't want to get spoiled, look away for the duration of this song. You can tell right away from the screenshots how they went for a more mature theme with the sequel. It's dark and atmospheric, I like it. There we go, welcome back. With Grandia 2 I couldn't remember what the difficulty was like, but the HD remaster actually comes with a hard mode, so I of course chose that. But on top of it, I decided to try how I would fare if I also played by the same rules I came up with for the first game. Skip all possible enemies, no buying gear from shops, and no using items. It was all fun and games until the very first proper boss fight, the Eyes of Valmar. I tried many times but I could not defeat it. I ended up having to battle regular enemies to level up all my party members 2 times before I could beat it. After that I continued playing by my rules, but I was barely scraping by. The following few bosses were tough. And 17 hours into the playthrough I hit another wall, the body of Valmar. It ravaged my whole party in a couple of attacks and I was not dealing nearly enough damage. So at this point I decided to throw away my rules and just play and enjoy the game like a normal person. I was still pretty underleveled for the rest of the playthrough, just barely leveling up enough to beat each boss, so I can't really tell you how difficult hard mode actually is when played normally. The boss fights at the end of the game were quite challenging for me and took many tries, but ultimately I managed to beat the game. I don't know Grandia 2 nearly as well as the first game, so it's difficult for me to say how the HD remaster compares to the original. Overall, it played just fine for me. The pre-rendered cutscenes are the only thing that looked a little rough. They're quite blurry at times and feel out of place when the rest of the graphics are so clean and crisp. There was also a sound issue where the enemy war cries when starting a battle were sometimes extremely loud. They had me grasping for the TV remote in a panic a couple of times, because I didn't want to wake up Freddy, who was often sleeping beside me. What do you think about Grandia HD Collection, Freddy? I think it's brilliant. Do you agree? Wanna say bye to the people watching? The video's over. Oh. Bye. High five. High five. To end the video. Yay.